So thank you everyone for coming. We're going to hear today from people who are at different points in their tech career. This is obviously what I wish I knew before starting a career in tech. So this will be their experiences. So Ruth and Tom have both come through the BJSS Academy system. Struan came through a different graduate system. So it'll be quite interesting to compare and contrast what they've learned. As you say, I think that's probably it from me in terms of introduction. But on the next slide, we'll see a bit about BJSS, because people often ask this question: who are BJSS and what do we do? At the top there, you'll see what is we call a marketing blurb, trusted by our clients. We deliver. What does it mean, right? What it means is we aim for professional excellence. We try to innovate and have innovative thinking. We try to deliver great outcomes for our clients and for the people who work for us. It's all about collaboration. It's all about working together, and we try and build those long-term relationships with our clients that we do more of them, do more interesting things. Even though you've probably not heard of us, there are 1,700 people in the company. I think when I started, there were about 120, so that was nearly 12 years ago, and 15 locations. At least there were 15 locations when we did these slides. There could be 16 by now. We may have missed an announcement on email whilst we've been here. Anyway, without much further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Ruth, who's going to tell you about things that she wished she'd known before she started a career in tech.
Hey, so I'm Ruth. I've been at BJSS for now 2 years. Do you want to go on to the next slide? So what is consultancy? So BJSS is a consultancy. It means that we have a vast amount of clients, and our clients often don't know how to fix software, or like they don't have the resources to make the software that they want, or and yeah, so that's great. And when we write the code needs to be really, really clear, because they might not, the client may not, the client may want to take over once we've done. So like if we write a project, then there's suddenly like we can either then support it, so we do that as well, or then they might grab it and then they want to support it. So we need to make sure that it's easily transferable for that. And yeah, we work in many different sectors with many different languages, which is the great thing. So it means that because what you can find out if you're in like an in-house software company, it's like a one box fits all, or like maybe focused on a specific language. I mean, through my time at BJSS, like I've worked on 3 different projects, and all of them have been completely different languages. I mean, both for this, all for the same client actually, but even still, each project has been completely different. And yeah, it means that you don't kind of go down a specialized field, as in, I mean, we'll go through all the different clients that we've got in a sec. So yeah, do you want to go on the next slide? So as you can see, we we kind of do, if you can think of something, we probably have done something for this client, as in like, or a sector, as in every sector, we've kind of done something. Okay, next slide. So yeah, here's a few of our, a few of our major clients, I guess, from the past few years. NHS Digital is probably quite a big one. And yeah, it's great. Okay, well-being at BJSS. So the great thing about BJSS is I can think you can find when you join a work environment, I don't know, you get the job done, and that's great, but equally at the end of the day, you yourself need to be in your right mind. And obviously everyone is completely different. Like I know when I joined, so everyone has a line manager, and in Leeds you have line managers and squad leads, just because the office is fairly big. So then you kind of have 2 people to fall back on. And yeah, so when I joined, as in I had meetings with my line manager once every 2 weeks, which I found great, really, really helpful going into a brand new company, like brand new city. And I had a lot of like personal stuff going on at the time as well. Now I have like a meeting once every 3 months. So obviously it totally different, like it doesn't matter, as in everyone's different, aren't they? But the point is that if you are having a hard time, like the support system's there, which I think is really important. Equally, like there's access to therapy if you need it, and like online GP appointments. So if you need a hand or anything, like that's also there. And then back before COVID, we also did really great sports sessions at lunch. So like I went rock climbing once a week, and BJSS paid for all of that. And like we went yoga. I know they do football as well, and a few other things. But yeah, I did the rock climbing and yoga. I found that really helpful. Okay, next slide. BJSS is also famous for the socials. So I joined through the Graduate Academy. I can't think, well, I dread to think how much pizza we ate during the academy. It was an awful lot, because the academy was really intense, because it was a month-long training academy. So you didn't do any work, like you didn't do any client work throughout that time, but you did like a month long of learning. So then, and like you did quite a lot of evening classes as well. So to try and help with that, BJSS will provide a lot of pizza and maybe some like food and drink. So as well, equally, like we got a summer festival coming up. Normally, like once a year, BJSS do like where they hire a place for a year for a weekend, and like you and your partners or like you and your kids can go. But obviously, because of COVID, it's a bit different. So I know the Leeds one we're meeting up like one of the stately homes, which will be really nice, and like having an outdoor kind of festival kind of thing for a day. And it'll be really nice because I haven't met a bunch of people from Leeds since March 2020. So I mean, obviously the offices are back opening, but which we'll talk about in a sec. And then equally, like there's loads of other things that we do. So yeah, next slide. If you are thinking of going into tech, there's like a bunch of resources you can do. So I'd say like if you were wanting to join like the academy, or like were wanting to apply for a tech role, I'd say definitely don't go and apply with something with zero experience. We don't mind training you up, but we want to see that you are doing something, or like that you're interested. So maybe like here's a few links that you can do, but like maybe like do a little project, think of something that you're interested in, like I don't know, make a little game. There's a bunch of free learning materials. Like the top one's like a fun little game, which you do with JavaScript, which is fun. Make a website if something you're interested in, like do that. There's thousands of free materials. This is just three of them, but equally like raid YouTube. That's another really good one. Like anything you can think of, someone's probably already done it, and like a lot of them have like how-to videos as well, so you can just like go through that and maybe like build a little game or build a website, whatever you want to do. Cool. I think that's all from me, so I'll hand over to Struan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So my name's Struan. I've been at BJSS for the last 2 years, and I graduated from the University of Manchester in 2017. So at this point, I've been in the industry for about 4 years, but while I was also at university, I also had a year in industry at IBM. So I've worked for a few different firms. BJSS I've been with for the last 2 years, and I've had the opportunity to work on 2 different projects for two very different clients, both of which are very well known. And what is really interesting about the projects or at least working for a consultancy, is that it's never dull. Clients tend to ask for a team for maybe 12, 18 months. And after that engagement has finished, you get to roll on to something completely different. So if you're someone who enjoys learning, if you're somebody who enjoys learning and enjoys working with a lot of different people, a lot of different technologies, it's fantastic, because you can see a project all the way from the beginning through to the end and then pick up something else. And in the software industry, when you're working on something from scratch, we call these greenfield projects. And greenfield projects are fantastic because you're able to work with something from the very beginning, and then you're able to shape the direction it goes. And in software, you find that it's a very collaborative process. So when you're working with your clients, because you're a consultant, you're expected to have a level of experience. And as you go throughout your career, your voice has a lot more weight. And so what I wanted to talk about in my section is really about when you're looking for a company, what you can do to make sure that this is the right company for you. And actually there's a few things you can do, some research you can do yourself, and also when you're coming to the interviews themselves, how you can make the most out of those. So a few of the things I'm going to be going through is GLASSDOOR. So this is an online tool, but I'll go into that a little bit later. Finding out what a company's mission statement. This is really important because it can give you a really good feel for how a company operates and where they're going. I'm then going to talk a little bit about interview questions you can ask at the end of interviews and how you can treat interviews as a two-way process. Also asking about ways of working. So everyone has different ways they enjoy working, and finding out how a company operates is going to be very important because it's going to dictate most of your working hours. Finally, going to be talking about personal development and also a little bit on COVID, because that's opened up a lot of different perspectives when dealing with companies. Could we go to the next slide, please? So Glassdoor, some of you may have come across this already, some of you may have not. It is a great tool to take a look at a company before you apply. So what Glassdoor does is it allows current employees of companies to leave reviews about the company they're currently at, which means that you can go on, you can look up a company name, and you can see the good, bad, and the hairy about all of these companies you're going to be joining. And they're completely honest because these are anonymous reviews. So you're able to look at salary insights, you're able to look at the perks the company is offering, you're able to look at what the interview process looks like. And really, if a company is below, my experience is if a company is below 3.5 stars, then you want to be looking into the comments and seeing what people are saying about it. And usually I would say the 3.5 star threshold is that is a litmus test for me. If it's below 3.5, I'm not going to apply for that company because it means that they're not looking after their staff, and that's really important. That's really important to me. Another thing is, when you're using Glassdoor, it's very important to see how the company is responding. So people can leave their reviews there and companies can respond to it, and maybe they can be constructive. And it's really seeing how the company engages with them. If a company is looking at what people are writing online and are completely denying it, there's going to be a pretty good chance that if you're in the company and you raise genuine concerns, they're going to act in the same way. So it's a great way to decide whether or not you even want to interview with this company. And also taking a look at some of the reviews on the interview process is also really helpful, because sometimes you can see questions that company has been asking, and then you can prepare yourself for that. It's a really useful tool, and it's just glassdoor.com or glassdoor.co.uk. They'll both go to the same place. Okay, could we go to the next one, please? The second one, and for me, this is the most important. It is, what is the company's mission statement? What does this company believe in? And there are a number of different companies which do different things. And in my experience, the companies which look after their staff and actually give you the best sense of well-being are companies which are working towards, they know what they're working towards. For example, some companies such as Zappos or Amazon are all around being very customer centric. Some companies are very, very based around being good for the environment, such as Patagonia. BJSS is all about building up long-term relationships and delivering outstanding value. And if you don't know what the company believes in based on what you find on the website, there's a pretty good chance that they don't know what that is either. So my advice here would be, once you're on the firm, once you've taken a look at Glassdoor, take a look at the firm's website, see if you can find an about page and see what they are working towards. Some firms will even tell you what their values are. And I'd highly recommend looking at these values, seeing how well they align with your values, because if these values match up and they're a really good fit, it means that you're going to be working with people who believe the same things as you, and people who you're going to get along with because they have the same value systems as you. So the point here is, it's all about what the company does and not necessarily what they say. So companies can say, we believe in helping the environment, or we believe in developing people. However, you also want to see their blog to see if they're actually acting on this. So for example, BJSS is a huge proponent for diversity, education, and investing in the local community. So while I've been at BJSS, we've helped out, we've delivered the site for the Digital Her Foundation. We've run Digital City Festival, where we've been doing as much as we can to help the local community by sharing the experiences we've had. And we've also been working with local schools and providing tuition there. And what that does is that shows you that BJSS is putting their actions behind their words. Now, could we go to the next slide, please? So this gives a glimpse into the sort of work which BJSS has been doing. And as you can see, there have been thousands of children who've been benefiting from workshops, and BJSS has always been trying to encourage a lot more female talent to engage in technology, which is a well-known problem in our industry because of role models and the routes people take in. And if you go to the BJSS About page, you'll be able to see all of this information. So just a top tip as a TLDR, take a look at the company, see what they believe in. If it's something you believe in as well, that's a great thing to bring up in the interview, because you know that you're going to be matching their culture somewhat. Next slide, please. So another thing I wish I knew when I was just starting off as tech is I always saw interviews as being a very one-sided activity. I'd always sit there and answer as many questions, get really nervous, and I really hated interviews. But as I started going through my career, I actually realized that an interview is a fantastic opportunity to ask my own questions, because you're going to be talking to real people who are doing real jobs, and you're not going to be dealing with their HR and marketing. So HR and marketing, they're always going to tell you what they want you to hear. However, if you talk to maybe a manager or an engineer who's working there, you have the opportunity to get some very candid and honest feedback from them, especially if you catch them off guard. Most people don't treat interviews as a conversation. They treat it as just answering loads of questions. So my advice would be, think about some questions you genuinely care about. And a lot of people go into interviews asking questions to try and make themselves look good. And you really shouldn't be doing this, because it's quite obvious when you are. So ask questions which are going to give you a feel for the company. And a few examples of these I've put down is, ask about what the first week looks like. So when you ask about what the first week looks like, you are finding out how they onboard people. Some people will talk about throwing you into the deep end, and that is code talk for, we don't have an onboarding process. We're just going to throw you straight in, and you're going to have to learn this while you're on your feet. And for some people, that's absolutely great. Some people love just being able to try and figure things out very quickly and actually get running. But if you don't have this sort of, if you haven't had a great deal of experience in tech, this may not be the best thing for you. So understanding how they're going to be helping you on your first weeks at work can be either a really good green flag as to whether or not they're going to look after you, or it could be a really red flag, and you know that your first weeks at the company is going to be a stressful mess. Another question I like asking at interviews is, how do you support personal development? So in the tech industry, people tend to spend a number of years at one company before moving on to the next. Some people will spend a number of years at an employer if the employer looks after them, but you always want to be thinking about how this employer is going to grow you. And do they cover certifications? Certifications are a great way to prove that you know certain technologies, and they actually look great on your CV. Do they provide personal development time? Are they going to be sending you, if you want to go to a festival, or you want to go to a conference to learn more about a specific language, will they sponsor you to go to that? That's also a really important one. And do they provide online training materials for you? such that you can read about technologies you're using to get better at it. So asking about how they support personal development time is really important. The next one to ask someone you're interviewing is, what makes you, the interviewer, stay at this company? And you can actually get a wide range of surprising answers. You may hear things which you haven't seen on the website. You may find out things which actually you really enjoy as well, because what people find enjoyable is very different for different people, and you're going to get a very wide range of perspectives here, and it's always an interesting one to ask. Another one is, what do you find challenging about working at the company? And this can be a double-edged sword. Some of these challenges are ones which are actually exciting to deal with. So, for example, if you're working with quite an interesting, fast-moving system, this means that you're always going to be on your toes and you're always going to have to be learning to keep up with this. And for some people, that's a great experience. But at the same time, they may be quite candid, and they'll tell you, actually, the management here can be a little bit tough, and these are some of the challenges I have to deal with. I wish these things were better. Now, not all of your interviewers are going to be this candid, but when they are, this can be a great opportunity for you to understand what you're going into. And then finally, what type of people thrive here? And this is going to give you a good idea of what the culture of their company looks like. Who are the people who do really well here? Because each company is going to have a very different idea of the type of people who thrive. For example, at BJSS encourages people to come to work with their whole selves, with authenticity. So if you're an authentic person, and you're not afraid to say that, actually, I'm really not feeling quite well in my headspace today, I want to take a day off for my mental health. You can get different perspectives of culture through this question, and it will give you an idea of if this is a company you want to work for. Go on to the next slide, please. Okay, ways of working is also another thing which will vary depending on companies. Not all companies work in the same way. And since the pandemic, the way companies have worked has changed a lot. And what we're starting to see emerging are different hybrid approaches being introduced by different companies. So for BJSS, when the pandemic hit, everyone started working from home. And working from home can be great, but at the same time, it doesn't work for everyone. Some people much prefer to work in the office. And I think as somebody going into tech, you want to understand, do I want to be working from home? Do I want to be working from an office? Or do I want a combination of both? So asking about this and finding this out when you're joining the company can be very important. So for example, at BJSS, we have a hybrid approach where if you want to work in the office, you can. And as the summer rolls on, there are going to be more and more opportunities to work in the office as it's safe to do so. However, at the same time, if you want to work completely from home, you're able to do that depending on your clients. The funny thing about working at consultancy is that the way you work really depends on what the client is comfortable with. So you could be on one project working completely remotely, could be working on another project, and you need to visit the company's office maybe once a week. So it really depends on the client you have at a consultancy or the company you're applying for. Could I have the next slide, please? Going on to personal development, there's a great quote from Will Durant, which is, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." And habits are, if you make personal development a habit, I remember hearing a quote, if you get 1% better every day, at the end of the year, you're already 37 times better than you started with. And I think this is another great quote. And if you're continually improving yourself, it gives you so many more opportunities to work with different types of tech. For example, with BJSS, some of the major disciplines major disciplines are front-end programming, back-end programming, platform, data science, data engineering. And maybe when you start off in your career, you may be focusing on one or two of these. But as you continue with your personal development, you may decide that actually some of these other areas are more interesting. And by being more diverse, or perhaps even specializing in one of these areas, it gives you far more opportunities to be useful to different companies. So if you join a company and they are a huge proponent for personal development, it means that while you're working there, your opportunities within that company are always going to be expanding. But if you decide to change companies, you are going to be compensated for that as well. So what I was talking about, the what's it called? Specialization versus being broad. In BJSS, we call this the T shape. So you have one pillar where you specialize, and then you have the top of the T where you have broader interests and are able to work across different disciplines. And getting certifications is a great way to prove that you know certain things, because it means that you can go to a company and they know that they don't have to train you. And also working with clients, they know that they don't have to train you. They know that you already have the skills they need. Could I have the next slide, please? And the final one, a great one to ask about, is what has the company's COVID response been? Now, hopefully we're at the tail end of the pandemic, and what this means is that you can ask about what a company's journey has looked like with COVID. Now, the reason this is a great question to ask is because it shows you how a company balances its own needs and also looking after their employees. Companies which didn't take the safety of their employees as paramount would try and force people back to the office as soon as possible because that's what they're used to. However, asking about how the company supported their employees throughout the time of the pandemic is a really great way to see how much they care and how much they're going to support you. For example, for BJSS, when we had the first lockdowns being announced, on the same day, we had an email, a company-wide email, explaining what BJSS's response to the pandemic is going to be and whether or not we would be coming in to the office the next day. And also throughout the year, I've had plenty of care packages being sent. So one of them was a well-being package where I had a bunch of different things which help with mental health, candles, face washes, all these different things, which it's a very small gesture, but it shows that you're being cared for. And as I said earlier, BJSS has been adapting to a hybrid working model as well. So before I go on to the next slide, just a recap of what I've spoken on. GLASSDOOR is a great way to find out if a company is worth applying to. Looking at their website is a great way to understand what they believe in. Interviews are a great way to ask different questions around what you may be going into, and then finding about their ways of working and how they responded to COVID is the final ways you can understand how they look after their people. Okay, believe the next slide will be Tom.
Yeah, thanks for that, Struan. So hi everyone, I'm Tom, and I was one of the first people to join the academy that was fully remote. So coming into my tech career, I'd never been into an office, and I think it took me, about 7 months until I'd ever stepped foot into an office with desks and chairs. It was a big surprise what that space looked like. So all I'd ever known was classrooms coming from an academic background. And so during my slides, really, there's going to be like a lot more questions to ponder on rather than me giving you straight information. And so, yeah, these are things to consider while you're eating your Weetabix in the morning or being bored stuck on Zoom. And so really, I wanted to start with location, because location was a really big one for me coming into the industry. And I've put the most important one there at the top. It is, where does the company operate from? And this was big for me because I'd had a couple of instances where I'd researched all about the company and probably not gone as deep as I wanted to, and then realised that where I wanted to be located is not the same place where the company operated their IT from. So I didn't want to move another 40 miles away. I wanted to stay quite central to the sort of points that I'd made for myself. And those points for me were about family and friends, about if I would feel comfortable moving away, living on my own for the first time from university. And then some of the questions to sort of ask yourself is there an opportunity to transfer? Because coming into an early tech career, you don't really know what life's going to have for you. You don't know if you're going to move up north to Scotland or down south to London. And so that was a big thing for me, because as I progressed in tech, that might take me to different locations. And I wanted to know if the company would be there to offer that transfer and help with that relocation. The other one is how mature is the office? So this comes down to how well are you going to integrate into the office? Are you going to feel comfortable if the office is quite small and it might be a bit more chaotic? Or are you going to feel good moving into that space? And how will this impact your future? I don't know how to answer that one yet, because I haven't figured that one out. But maybe something for you to ponder. And so I'll give an example from BJSS if we go to the next slide. So looking at BJSS at the beginning, so there was every office on there, apart from Lisbon and Melbourne, coming back to Dan's point of expansion is faster than you can keep up with. And so 3 key locations that I picked out from the list were Nottingham, Manchester and Sheffield, because they were all quite close to where I was from, or maybe where I was going, depending on the circumstances. And I ended up going to Nottingham because that's where I went to university, did my degree, it's where my friends were, and that's where I felt most comfortable, mainly because public transport was amazing. But yeah, that was locations for me. And if we move on now, I'll talk about another big thing that I considered coming into tech, and that was company size. So back when I was in university, I was quite a timid, more introverted person. And I thought that I wanted to go to a company that was maybe a bit smaller, not too many people, so that I wouldn't feel overwhelmed joining the company. And so as I talk about company size, we're gonna mainly focus on short term rather than long term, but it's important to consider both how is the company size going to affect me in the short term versus the long term. And so I've got some slides, well, I've got a slide coming up next, if we go to that one, that discusses larger versus smaller in some aspects. And then I'll give a recap again about why BJSS was the right choice for me. So funding, can they invest in you? This comes down to personal development. In larger companies, they might have more funding to facilitate that versus smaller. But in smaller companies, you might get a more one-to-one mentoring system going off. And the word invest here really means different things like monetary value versus time, right? And we'll move on to security. Is your position secure? If you're going to join a startup or a smaller company, there is some risk factor there that potentially your job cannot be secure versus in a large company. And structure-wise, as we go larger, we become more structured because we need more management to manage more people versus in smaller, where it might be a bit more free-flowing. You might have more access to senior members, directors, stuff like that. And a key one here next is individuality. How will I feel as an individual in the company? Will I end up feeling like a number or a person? And necessarily large versus smaller doesn't really go that way, because that depends on the circumstances, right? You can only sort of judge that going into the company yourself. And particularly on that aspect, you've got the role as well. are you going to become more specialized or more broad? And this comes back to the T-shape that Struan was talking about, or the older term now is full stack developer, but we're trying to move away from that. So larger companies, obviously, as they expand, you might get more opportunity to specialize and become an expert, or at BJSS you might become a Jedi. But you could also have the opportunity to become broad and specialize in smaller. It just might take a bit longer, or it might be a very particular use case. And that's something to consider going into the company. And then communication. Is communication good or poor? Now, larger versus small doesn't work here, because that depends. I can only give you like an overview. Large companies, more people, especially in a remote setting where you're restricted to emails or phone, more people, the less the communication starts to go between the people that need to go through. In a smaller, you might be able to just have a group chat. It'd be way easier if we could put everyone in a group chat, but it might become cluttered with memes, etc. And so those are my points on larger versus smaller. Now for BJSS, I knew that any company that was willing to invest 4 whole weeks of training through the academy was going to be a company that is willing to invest in your personal development. And one of the big selling points of the academy is that you don't have to reapply for your job. It's there as soon as you get into the academy, so it is secure. And the structure one's an interesting topic for BJSS, because we sort of, from the outside, it might look like, because we have so many offices, we're becoming such a big, large company. But our internal structure means that we still operate more like a medium/small company, with the form of, we have project teams and squad leads, and above that we have our head of delivery. So it's quite a low-tiered structure internally per office. And so individuality, like I say at BJSS, I'm certainly treated like an individual and not a number. And role-wise, at the minute, I'm becoming more broad rather than specialised, but in the future, I hope to become more specialised. And the communication's been good. Emails, and we use like an internal Slack, so it's always easy to grab someone and stuff like that. So if we move on to the next slide, we'll talk about the projects. So coming into BJSS, project-wise, I was thinking, sometimes I don't feel comfortable working on certain things. I'd like to uphold to my ethical values. And so some things to consider are you going to be comfortable delivering the work that you're going to be doing coming into the tech industry? And do your interests align with the project? And this is not like interests in form of what the company's interests are. This is like, am I comfortable progressing myself using the tech stack? Am I happy to work with this amount of people? And more broad questions like that covering projects. And so this also includes like some of this, like the services that you want to be working in, or like areas, and we'll touch that on the next slide now. So at BJSS, they offer a range of services from technology, engineering, cloud, all the way down to design and strategy, AI, etc. And so for me, the key ones that sort of came out to me were the cloud and platform, obviously the engineering, and the AI, which I'd done a little bit of at university. But I think the more key one on this page for me was the underpinned by digital transformation. Like what a company value that is. And that to me related to my next slide, which we'll go to now, which is all about delivering value. And so this is a question for everyone. How will the outcome affect you on a project? Are you someone that can be okay with not delivering on promises that you've set out? Are you gonna you know, maybe beat yourself up about it? Or are you going to be okay with not delivering the things you set out to deliver? And so that should reflect the sort of company and the tech role that you want to go into as you come into an industry. Like, are you aligned with what the company's aligned to do? And so to do that, you should ask, is the company known for its delivery process? What awards do they hold, if any? And is this the right sector to work in for you? And at BJSS, they've won the Queen's Award for Enterprise Agile, which was good for me because I wanted to work in a good agile company. They also won the NHS Nightingale Award for their work in COVID. So I was like, this feels morally right, ethical. And I really wanted to stick to the public sector work where the things I'm delivering value in are also helping a lot of other people in the country. And so that's why delivering value should be something to consider as you go into the tech industry. And so I'll move to my next slide. And this is my last one before I hand over. And so this one's talking about routes into tech. And so I'll start with a quote from Albert Einstein, which he says, "We cannot solve problems with the same thinking we use to create them." And so, read between the lines there, the only thing you need, apart from programming experience to get into tech, is the ability to solve problems. And so, with that in mind, at the bottom of it, I've talked about the typical routes that you could take from where you are now into where you could be in the tech industry. So if you're still at school or A-levels, very early on in academia, you could go further on into university, progress into a graduate stream or industry. You could take an apprenticeship, which I know BJSS offer and many other companies. You could potentially go straight into a graduate scheme. It's an individual basis. If you feel confident and ready in your skills in the tech industry, go for it. And again, if you've some master Jedi coder, you've been trained from parents, brothers, sisters since 5 years old, then yeah, go for it. Go straight into industry. You can do it. And obviously, as we move across more into a university setting, college, go to graduate scheme or industry, or even if you're in industry now and you don't like the career path you've chosen, there are opportunities for you as well. You can become a career retrainer, which the Academy takes in from BJSS, where we'll take the fact that you've been in other industries and we'll take the key skills from there and we'll develop the technical side with you. Or if you were in the tech industry to begin with, and maybe you've had time out and want to come back in, again, the Academy or a grad scheme could be the one for you to come back and retrain in core skills again. And so that sums up sort of the different routes you could take from where you are now. And I'll hand over to Dan.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So building on Tom's there, of how do you get into tech? There are many different ways, and I guess tech we tend to express as code. It's not always, but it's always very, very useful. And it's if you like solving problems, the medium is through code for a lot of technology for software development. Actually, it can be through different ways for testing. Actually, how do we solve different problems? This automation goes in there as well. But there are different ways. If you're a problem solver, actually, tech is another problem that you can use to solve problems, and it's just the medium that we use. Here, I've listed some stuff that depends on different ways you can get into tech, depending on learning models. So there's the sort of free self-led, so things like free code camp. So that's all free and online, and you sort of do it at your own. You have to be quite strict with yourself in your learning. Then you have some free virtual things like Khan Academy and Tech Up Women. Now, Tech Up Women we partner with quite often. They're doing data engineering and software engineering. So we're their industry advisory board, and they're trying to get 105 people into each cohort, which is coming up, I think, October into next year. So it's free, absolutely free. to sign up and you can get on that course. And we've committed to interview all 105 people in each stream to get them into BJSS. There are paid ones. So when Tom talked about some of the retrainers, we've taken people from Tech Up Women who've done Khan Academy, who've done Free Code Camp, but also from North Coders and Lewagon. Now, these are places where you have to pay up front. It's a fee of X, but they quite often come with guarantees that they'll be working with industry partners and will get you X amount of interviews or a job within X amount of time. It depends on their success rate. Have a look, as I said, GLASSDOOR from Struan earlier, are really good ways to get some feedback on when they're good. There's a learn to work part. Now, this is interesting. This is a bit like a bond scheme. So people like Sparta and FDM particularly, is you would join them, go through it all, and they will give you 3 months of training up front. The key point here is they do not pay you during those 3 months. It's only if you get to the end of those 3 months, they give you a job. And the point is then you actually have to work for them for 2 years until you can leave. So it's they will train you, but they could bin you at any point in those 3 months. You have to pay your travel to get to their offices, to undertake the training, and then they might give you a job at the end, and you still have to stay there 2 years afterwards. So it's not for everyone. I know some people have gone through it, and it's ended up really well for them. But just to let you know, there are different ways in, and it sort of depends on where you are and what you can do. And then there are actual jobs, as we spoke about. So in the BJSS Academy, now the Academy is different. It is actually, you are an employee, as Tom said, from day one. It's not, here's some training. Now, did you make it? No, nobody fails. The whole point is you are an employee. You get treated exactly the same. Lots of other people do this, especially via apprenticeships, modern apprenticeships, and their grad schemes. Our Academy is actually it doesn't require any particular degree or background or anything whatsoever. It's more about you and where you are now and where you want to go than where you've been. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more around some of the other things we've got. I hope it's the next one. Yay, there we go. Some top tips. And if you're just starting out, number one top tip, don't give up. It is frustrating. Now, I had to learn this stuff from manuals, a VB3 manual. If anyone's read one of those, I had to learn Delphi from the books around Ball and Delphi and Paradox. It wasn't like a Sam's Teach Yourself 24 hours. These were just the manuals that came with the discs. So it's very different. So do not give up. But some top tips for your CV. Grab a Git repository. If you don't know what Git is, go and look it up. It's basically a way to store your code online. Include that link on your CV. It's really good. As Ruth said, Code Wars, there are other ones, is keep your skills fresh by trying new challenges and add them to your repository so we can see them. Lots of people think HTML, JavaScript, and CSS are the web. They are a part of the web, certainly, don't get me wrong, but don't rely on just those. Find out how the web works underneath, behind that web page. Go and understand about HTTP methods, about APIs, about SQL, about databases, about end-tier architecture. Just go and be curious behind it. And the thing that will make you stand out, probably from everyone else, is if you add tests and add unit tests to your code, you will be well ahead of everyone else. That is my number one tip, my number two tip, apart from don't give up. Anyway, those are some top tips. I'm sure everyone else has got top tips, but we'll ask for any questions. I think Fern's got a couple, but has anyone else got anything to add to those top tips?
I've got a few actually. So this one's for Tom. What did you do at university to get into tech?
So at university, I completed my computer science degree, but alongside that, the university offered a society for coders and devs. And so by joining that, I got more exposure to programming more things, as well as doing self-learning, because I sort of wanted more on my CV and more experience to stand out before I wanted to go into tech.
Amazing, thanks, Tom. And Ruth, what attracted you to BJSS? What was the most important thing to you?
I think the main thing was just how well they look after everyone. And the fact that, as mentioned, there is personal development, and you're not just in one single, as in, even if you work on a project for 2 years, you can then move off and then move on to something completely different. As in, often in other companies, you don't get that opportunity.
Makes total sense. Thank you, Ruth. I had one for Dan as well, and it's more along the lines of the academy. So what do you look for? What are those key skills that you really want when you're taking people into the academy?
It's not skills so much. It's more in there are three things we talk about quite often, which are passion, potential, and problem solving, and those are the key areas. You can teach people technology, but you cannot teach them to be passionate about what they want to do. You cannot necessarily teach them to be problem solvers. You can equip them with more tools and some ways of doing it. But that comes across. It's when you speak to people, it comes across as that passion, that enthusiasm, that want, that desire. It is there. It's inbuilt. So in terms of hard skills, it's not that. But giving evidence through a CV is really hard. It's a really hard thing to make your CV sort of pop. And some people think, well, I need to jazz it up a little bit. Actually, it's more about what you speak about. So Tom there, exactly the sort of thing we look for in terms of, yeah, I was doing computer science, but actually I joined this other thing. Or, oh yeah, I went to these hack events and look at my code here on this Git repo. Or I built this website for my mum and dad because they own a shop and they wanted to sell some stuff online. You go, absolutely brilliant. That's the stuff we're going, didn't need to. It wasn't a thing that was being taught to you. It's a thing that you went and learned and did. So those things really stand out on CVs to me. And then it's great talking about people. How'd you do that? And people say things like, well, I didn't know, so I Googled it. And you went, right, that's not the big secret about the IT industry. Don't anyone know is that we all Google stuff all the time.
Amazing, thanks, Dan. And then Struan, if you had one interview question and only one in an interview, what question would you ask? What's the most important?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say that's a really good question because I always have so many.
Sorry.
This is the question we're now going to ask interviews in future, isn't it? If you only had one question to ask me at this interview, which question would it be? It
would be along the lines of what gets you up in the morning and why do you love your job? And I think if you get a genuine response to that and you see somebody's face light up when you ask that, it means that they are there because they want to be there. They are there because the company gives them something which they value from the very bottom of their soul. And it is, if you see the face light up, it means that actually there is genuine passion there and they really enjoy. But if you ask them that question and you kind of nothing lights up, maybe there's not something everyone's working towards. So it's feeling that genuine passion. It's feeling that the company does have a culture, and actually really hearing about some of the things you might not have seen on the website. I think that would be the one question I'd ask.
Makes total sense. Thank you. I'm sorry for the difficult question. So that's all of my questions. If anyone is watching, please do feel free to put something in the Q&A box. If you can't find it, it will be at the bottom of your screen on the black panel, just towards the right. If you click on there, you can write something in there for us. We'll wait another minute or so just in case anyone wants to ask a question.
It's interesting. It's probably the question I get asked the most, Struan, is quite often, what keeps you here? Or actually, you've been at BJSS for a long time. What do you enjoy about it? Because you've stayed so long. Mm-hmm. And it's always that. It's a great question because I get to talk about all the things I've done and how much my job has changed. And I always want to work in a consultancy, but not in one of the big ones. I really like the opportunity of working with different clients in different tech, in different sectors, but not changing your employer. And that for me was one of the key things. And the opportunities I've had here. I mean, Tom was talking about how you can become a Jedi. This is an old in-joke from 11 years ago where we created a piece of in-house software and decided that the top ranking would be Jedi. And that's continued for 11 years now. So we got the opportunity to do it. Inside job. Oh dear. Okay. Still around.
Absolutely love it. I'd love to know how to get to that point. Yeah, and the different steps underneath as well.
Yeah.
Seems like we have a few questions in the Q&A box.
Oh,
We do have a couple. What are the day-to-day responsibilities at BJSS? Oh, so that will depend by role, I guess, that you're undertaking. What does a normal day look like for you at the moment, Ruth?
So as a software developer, so I'm technically on 2 projects. So you start in the morning. It's generally core hours for BJSS at 9:30 till 4:30. So you got to be working at that. But then obviously there's some flexibility around that. So get up, work on some tickets. So we all have Jira tickets. So where like big tasks, like a big feature, is like split out into lots of different things. So yeah, pick a ticket up and start working on that. And then you have stand up. So then the whole team gets together, says what they did yesterday, what they did today. That's normally in person, you'd all literally stand up. But obviously remote is a bit different. And then yeah, just obviously you might get in different meetings, or then there's always someone to talk about. That's like if you don't fully understand something, like with what you're working on, like there's someone who's probably already done it in a different thing. So that's always really helpful. Like there's a bunch of stuff that I've been working on recently and I've had no idea how to do, and that's 2 years into the job. There's people who are 10 years into the job and they've got no idea. Like it's always a good idea to ask for help. That's definitely.
Yeah, some of mine it's an interesting one. What is the day-to-day varies, but one of my most favorite jobs was talking about tech was actually how much you know about Windows.NET Compact Edition 2 framework that's running on a Motorola handset. Go, nothing. Well, we're going to need to find out because that's what you're testing. Like, oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Go figure that out.
Yeah. Like the job can literally change day to day, as in like you can be working on something completely different in a completely different language. That's the fun thing about it, I guess.
Just had a quick one, which was, is the Academy based at all locations? I live in Nottingham, so I don't know if Academy positions are available at Nottingham office. Yes, they are. There's a slight caveat to that in some of the newer offices. So one of the newest ones is Newcastle, and there's probably about 10 people there. So I suspect there will be positions in Newcastle available by the end of 2022, but generally new offices that start up need to get to a critical size, which is generally about 30-ish before they do. But otherwise, yes, all our UK locations do have graduates. And there's another one. Here's one for the panel. Are there any areas of tech that are going to be growth areas in the future that would be worth getting experience in? Well, go on, Struan.
yeah. So I'd say platform engineering is a very big one at the moment. So that is knowing how to work with AWS, GCP, AWS, GCP, or Azure. We're noticing that lots of our clients are demanding this more and more at the moment because a lot of companies are doing these digital transformations where they're moving from running their own servers to actually delegating that to the cloud. So platform's a very big one. Data engineering and data science is an absolutely huge one at the moment. Companies are collecting this data and they're realizing that they can bring people in to analyze this data, and it is booming at the moment at BJSS. At BJSS, we're trying to bring on many more data engineers because there's just such a high demand for it. And I'm going to throw a little bit of an oddball into there. I think decentralized applications are going to be a very big one. Things based on Ethereum. It's still very early days, but I think Ethereum-based applications and decentralized applications are going to be a huge one in the next decade.
Yeah, that covers most of it. We're investing quite heavily in data and in the data space and lots of data platforms. It's an interesting one because platform engineering itself and the DevOps movement are still fairly new, and we're already changing it into being this platforms plus data. So it's always changing. We can't look too far ahead, but yeah, distributed computing is going to be quite interesting, and not Bitcoin, but distributed ledger could be quite interesting as well, especially for things like medical records, which then ensures privacy. So I think that's a bit further away and right out there. But if you want in terms of tech that we see more and more demand for, or in terms of languages, yeah, Python and platform. So GCP is the new kid on the block. So yeah, always good to know. It is about to start raining here. I am about to start sounding like Karis, Tom. But GCP is good, but there's lots of stuff out there for Azure and for AWS, and I would recommend getting a grounding in at least one of them. It's then quite transferable. But yes, Python and platform will give you a good base, I think, for future, especially into data engineering, platform engineering.
We have another quite personal question here as well. So I'm looking to change careers into tech and have so far been self-teaching using free code camp, Udemy courses and Code Wars. I'm currently looking at getting onto a North Coders cohort. Is it a requirement to have done a boot camp to be eligible for the academy, seeing as my degree is in microbiology, so not tech related?
Nope. So we've had materials scientists, we've had English lit graduates, we've had people with no degrees, we've had sheep farmers, we've had casino managers who are on a cruise ship. So no, actually, you don't have to have done a boot camp. Those are just things that some people think, oh, it'd be better if I do this. And quite often those sort of boot camps come with the guarantee of getting you a job or interview. In BJSS, that's not the important bit. The important bit is you. If you can say, actually, I've done all these things, look at my code, test me if you want. Quite often there are online tests, which are just problem solving through code. If you pass that, we'll have a chat to you. And even if you don't, quite often we'll have a chat to you anyway and go, hey, that was really good. You probably missed stuff in these bits. Here are some really good ideas. So the door is never closed. What we try and do is actually leave open, go, you didn't quite make it in these areas. Try using this. So we'll give people and go, reapply again, come back in 3 months. And quite a few people have done. So the short answer is, no, you don't need to have gone to a boot camp any way, shape or form. And the longer answer is that one I waffled on about.
If you do apply though, like we would want to see like an application that you've done, or so as in, especially where like if you do get as far through to the interview stage and like some developers get to interview you, as in we want to be able to like see some of your work that you've done, or talk through a problem that you've solved. So maybe do something that you really enjoy, like try and do like something personal that you're not kind of following as a tutorial, like I don't know, like either doing a website or as in making a little like calculator app just yourself, like whatever interests you. There's that, the thing with coding is you can literally do anything. So we kind of want to see what excites you, because we want you to be passionate about it.
It's a really interesting one with that, because obviously you see people who've written tic-tac-toe apps or chess games if they're really, really complicated. And the way you normally get into this, people go, how do you write a website? You know, if I didn't use Wix, if I wanted to have my own one and host it, and you start with this. Because quite often you fail. I failed multiple times, you know, and don't worry about that at all. But it's not the failure that's you have to build on those, right? I know 1,000 different ways not to do stuff because I failed doing it that way. I know some of the better ways to do it now, and it doesn't mean that tomorrow I won't find a better way again.
Thanks, all. That was some really good answers. Last call for questions if there's any more from anyone. But thank you so much for sort of sharing with us and asking us those questions. And thanks to our speakers. Thank you, everyone. Absolutely brilliant. Really enjoyed hearing your advice and stories. And thanks for our attendees for coming. And please do join us again for any future webinars. You can find them on our events page on our website. Thanks all.
Brilliant.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.